So I was out last week, so a lot of my time yesterday was spent kind of catching up on things. So these first two will be pretty quick, and then I'll spend some more time on this third thing. So this first one is a learning or a bug fix. I don't know how you want to classify it here. So there was a call with a user where you can see sort of in the background here that they had just created their account, and then despite it being a new account, there was some content appearing behind this modal here, which isn't actually hers. So this shouldn't have been there. So did some digging on that and realized that what was happening is that somehow the front end was calling the API endpoint that returns this list of content before the front end had actually authenticated the user. So essentially the front end was telling the back end, like, give me content for a logged out user. And what the backend was doing was returning reports or content created by users that were not signed in. So this is content that's assigned to the unknown web user ID technically. And so this is any content that was created by users that were not logged in through the homepage that's public. So it's still public content technically. So there really was no data leak per se, but just definitely a bad user experience. So the fix was that the backend will only respond if the front end has successfully authenticated the user. And there should have been a front end fix as well. I think it may have already been fixed actually as part of the refactoring maybe, where the front end won't call the backend now unless the user is actually logged in. So it's just a quick learning bug fix thing there.
Hey, Parker, a quick question about that. First of all, welcome back. It's good to see you.
Nice.
And, so there was a possibly related issue with Brandon Leach, and I'm wondering if that, where some content was being called that seemed to be outside of the container, if we know if that was related to this. Jing, I think you might have been trying to look into this, or maybe we're waiting to hear back from Brandon, but do we have any idea if those two things are related, or do we know?
Yeah, I was like messaging Brandon and waiting for his content. I tried to replicate it, but I cannot. So yeah,
Okay.
only after I get a data from him, I'll double check.
Yeah. Well, then I guess maybe it could be a hypothesis that those two issues are related issues.
It could be, yeah. And the high level thing is that the change Parker is making just make our backend safer. So even you are trying to calling without authorization, you now will not return anything.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
The hypothesis, yes, it should be related, but I need to confirm on that.
Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. Yeah, this next thing is another quick investigation from yesterday. So I realized that our deployments were about a week outdated. So you should be able to see here. So this is our cloud console. So you can see a Flask backend. There's this little scary red thing here. And then a staging one as well somewhere, Flask staging backend. And so this is our backend, obviously, and you can see when it was last deployed successfully. But there was an issue where it's kind of hard to explain without getting too deep into the weeds here, so we use Flask. That's kind of the platform we use for serving our API, essentially. And Flask has a bunch of dependencies itself. And one of those dependencies, I'm not even going to try to pronounce this, was updated on September 30th, I think, which was incompatible with the version of Flask that we were using. And so that was causing a breakage. So the deployments that had happened for the past week weren't actually successfully going through. So there was some stale code, and there actually still is some stale code in production, which Drody, I saw you file a bug about file uploads not working. I think that's related to this, that the code in production is just pretty outdated at the moment. And just some bugs there that should be fixed once this is actually deployed to production.
So just to confirm, we thought that we were shipping to prod, but it wasn't actually going out the door. Is that the summary there?
Correct. So we should be able to see here. Yeah, so there was an attempted deployment 20 hours ago and 3 days ago that both failed. The last successful one was 7 days ago to production.
How did you learn about this issue, Parker? Like, did you just happen upon it, or do we have a way of being notified when this happens?
I mostly happened upon it. Yeah, I had noticed a bug in staging, I think, that was fixed in the code locally. So then I went into the staging run and saw that the staging deployment had failed, and then kind of dug into the logs and saw that was the issue.
Yeah.
Important thing.
Yeah, thanks for looking at that. We're looking at some features, and the Parker was looking, and that feature doesn't exist. However, we should figure out a way to get an alert. So maybe Parker, after that, please take a look if you have any alert function in GCP that's triggering email or Slack messages for this thing.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. Now to the kind of meatier thing here. This is still very much a work in progress, so be prepared for some bugs here. But the idea is that we've kind of been talking about for a while, having the URL have a lot of flexibility and sort of treat the different components of the URL as filters. So I'll click on these in a second, but just at a high level, like this would be an organization level URL. So any of the content that you're interacting with at this URL would be related to storytell.ai. Similarly here, this is any content related to Armory. Even though I belong to Storytell, there might still be some content within Armory that I have access to. So I should still be able to access the link and access that subset of data. And then there's the user level, tag group level, and sort of each of these different parts of the URL. There are probably things we can do to make it prettier, but that's sort of the idea, to enable all these different levels of granularity. So to start with, I'll click on this org level. And so you'll see here, eventually it'll load, there's a ton of tags associated with the Storytell org, so much so that it's actually slowing down the page a little bit. So these are all tags belonging to content created within Storytell. And the new thing is I can now go to my knowledge and see all 2,500 pieces of content within Storytell that I have access to.